Hello, I'm Julie Tilly, Closest Corner. I met so many green people in New York City that I decided to interview them. With Closest, our sustainable marketplace, we already helped people to buy sustainable. But it's not enough. People ask us a lot of questions about how they can start a sustainable life. It's why I decided to take my shoes, the bus and subway to take a discussion with all New Yorkers who can help you to have a greener life. Hello, Catie.
Hello.
I'm so happy to meet you today, and you will speak about trash.
Yeah.
It's very important in New York to speak about that. And your business, your association, I think it's...
You're a non-profit organization.
Your non-profit, it's Legion Litter. Litter Legion.
Yes, Litter Legion. Yeah. That alliteration gets you sometimes.
And how do you start, and why are you starting to create this non-profit about trash?
So I started in June of 2020 during the pandemic. Here in New York, a lot of things, a lot of services got cut because so much money had to go towards hospitals and all the things the city needed to do to protect us against COVID. And one of the things they ended up cutting was $106 million from the Department of Sanitation. So that is a pretty big amount. And unfortunately, with so many people being at home and working from home, sanitation collects only residential waste.
Yes.
So with more people working from home, people were generating more waste. Also more buying things online and all that stuff. So there was more residential waste. So they couldn't cut any of those collection services. So a lot of the cuts went to street sweeping and emptying the corner baskets. So, and in the beginning it was fine because there weren't a lot of people outside, everyone was really kind of hunkering down. But in June, when the weather started getting nicer, so much more people were outside because outside was the only place you could congregate safely. Yes. So people were coming here from all over, like surrounding states and everything, because the roads were clear. It was just, you can get to New York so fast. So they were just coming here to hang out and experience, like see what it was like. And unfortunately, that led to them just leaving their trash all over the streets and the sidewalks, and a lot of the corner baskets in my neighborhood would just be overflowing for days and not being emptied. So I went out on my own initially and just started cleaning up on my block. And after seeing how much I was cleaning up, 2 to 3 bags on one block, I started to think, okay, well, maybe other people could help out. We could tackle more. So I started posting on social media to see, if anyone was interested in going out and picking up trash. And I think a lot of people, they see it and they're like, oh, this is awful. Why is there this trash? But they don't feel empowered to do something about it. Yes. So I think giving people the opportunity to hey, listen, we're gonna go out as a group. We'll give you all the supplies you need. You'll have gloves. You'll have litter pickers, all the stuff you need to safely pick up the trash. And they really got into it. So it started, pretty small. We would have 4 or 5 people per event. Now we consistently have 12 to 15.
Whoa.
Sometimes our larger events, when we do really big specific things, we'll do events for Halloween where we wear costumes. Yes. Earth Day, we also do costume cleanups. I think it's really fun for the kids. Events like that, we could get 30 plus volunteers. We did a day of service for Martin Luther King Jr. Day, and we had 35 volunteers, 14 of whom were kids. So it was really great to get, the community involved, especially the younger members of our community, who really understand, why littering is bad, and they also don't understand why older people still do it. They know it's wrong, and they're like, why do people litter? And it's I really don't have an answer for that.
Yes, it's true. It's so difficult to explain why we know that it's not good and why we did. And we did.
Yeah.
Yes. I try to do the same thing than you, but just for me, because when I'm going to the playground with my kids, I always have gloves and I try to have a bag, plastic
Yeah.
bag if I found one or something like that. And my little one, she tried to do the same thing as me without gloves. I'm not happy about that, but
Yeah.
but I'm happy that they learn to clean.
Yeah, and so like with that, I've also created cleanup kits that are at local businesses that people can pick up if, you know, they happen to be out and about and they see a lot of mess, or, you know, they're like, oh, this is cool, I can do this, you know, on my street tonight when I get home from work. And it's 2 bags, 2 pairs of gloves, and like just a little quick guide of, you know, safety things to look out for, what to do with the filled bag, how to, you know, contact my organization, you know, to join other cleanups and get more information. So I think it really gives people an opportunity to, you know, they have everything that they need. They can't say, oh, I don't have gloves, I don't have this. It's all you need to get it done.
Oh, and in which area do you do that? It's Manhattan, or you can go?
So I have them right now. It's just locally, more in Hell's Kitchen. We have about 5 or 6 businesses. It's on our website if you go to litterlegion.org and click on the button for kits, and it gives you a map of all the locations that have them. It's usually like coffee shops, places like that where people can just run in. It's like a nice like little metal bucket with a sign that says, you know, all their information, and you just grab one out, and it's great. I've had people who've, you know, I had a volunteer who was moving, and on her moving day, she noticed like this huge like pile of trash. It was like ripped open and everywhere, and she knew down the block one of these coffee shops had kits. So she ran over there, got a kit, and her husband, you know, cleaned up all that trash, you know, and didn't leave it there, which is, you know, great to see. And that's what I want more of. I want people to feel empowered, that they don't have to wait for someone else to do it. They can be the one to do it. And I know it's so easy to feel like, you know, it's somebody else's job and I shouldn't have to do this, but you know, we all live in this city. We all have to take responsibility for our public spaces, and we should feel a sense of ownership to be able to maintain them ourselves and not feel like we have to wait for someone else.
Yes, I totally agree with you. And it's why I think that it's sometimes something bad to put the trash in another area, because we don't see what exactly. But when you know, when you learn about the numbers, you can be only afraid about that. Do you have some numbers to afraid people we are looking at?
No numbers of like trash? Like,
yes.
So on a normal cleanup, we usually collect about 100 pounds of litter. And so we also sort out metal, glass, and plastic recyclables, because we do find a lot of like bottles and cans and, you know, food containers and stuff on the street, and we don't have public recycling bins here. Unfortunately, they just become too contaminated because our social structure doesn't, you know, we don't recycle as well as we probably should. And it's not a matter of lack of infrastructure, it's a matter of social values. Unfortunately, in America, we're still living in this throwaway culture. It's starting to shift, but more people need to, you know, work on that and be more mindful of how they do things. So a lot of people, you know, throw their cans and bottles into the corner basket. It's fine. It's better than it being on the street, but those items don't get recycled. So we do pull some of those out, but we also have a thriving community of canners, people who go out specifically and pull redeemable bottles and cans from the garbage to, you know, earn an income. It's 5 cents per can or bottle. But, you know, some people, this is their livelihood, and that's how they, you know, pay their rent, pay their bills, support their families. So anytime we come across one of those individuals on our cleanup, we like bring them over to our recycling bag, and it's like, you take whatever you want. Like, you know, you need this more than we do, because we're not gonna like redeem it or anything. We just want to make sure it's not part of the landfill waste stream.
Yes.
That those materials do end up going to a recycling facility.
And during your cleanup, which trash are coming back very often and in numerous...
So things we see very often, of course, cigarette butts. Cigarette butts are like the number one piece of litter in the world.
Yes.
And we do sometimes have volunteers on our cleanups that focus solely on that.
Oh,
so
yes.
we'll have people that kind of go after the larger items, and then we'll have one or two people that kind of bring up the rear and they meticulously grab all the little cigarette butts. There was a woman who collected almost 600
Oh my God.
from 6 blocks in just 2 hours. And that was her counting what she collected. You know, there were like 10 other people on that cleanup that also may have collected some cigarette butts, but weren't counting them. But she specifically went after the cigarette butts and just collected almost 600 herself. So it's really hard because you can kind of like gloss over and like not really see them, but once you recognize that they're there, you see them everywhere.
Yes.
Another thing we see a lot of are coffee cups, either
Yes.
like the plastic coffee cups for cold beverages, the paper cups for hot beverages. There's just a lot of that. You know, having a reusable cup is so easy, and so many places are willing, you know, to fill it up. It also saves them the money because they don't have to spend it on these throwaway items, and it makes it easier. So those are probably the things we come across most often. There's also a lot of like strange things. Like we once found like a whole car bumper just like on the side of the road. And then we do sometimes find usable items. Unfortunately, in New York, you know, towards the end of the month when people move out, they, you know, sometimes they are moving somewhere smaller or leaving the city, and they just have to dump all of their stuff outside. And you know, it's hard for most people to know places where they can bring stuff to donate.
Yeah.
So we'll go through those bags and we'll pull anything that's usable. We've pulled like pots and pans, different types of like storage containers. And if they're in good condition, you know, we just kind of wipe them down. And then on 45th Street and 9th Avenue, there's this little nook called the Hell's Kitchen Free Store,
Yes.
where people can, you know, put reusable items for other people in the neighborhood to just come and pick up. So anytime we find those types of things, like we found like a perfectly good, like, you know, bucket for like mopping, for cleaning. It still had the tag, like the sticker on it and everything. So we just like gave it a nice rinse, wiped it off, and brought it to the free store. And you know, that's something that shouldn't be in the garbage, and someone can use it. So, you know, it's a great concept.
And why are you thinking that we found so much trash on the street? Because in Europe we have more bins to put the trash during the night, and like that the animals can't
get to it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And why for you?
It's you know, really difficult in New York City. I think a lot of it comes down to our population density. We're very, very densely populated, because instead of our buildings sprawling out, they sprawl up. And you know, at the end of the day, all the trash that people are generating in these like 50-story buildings has to come down to the street level. So you end up with these piles and piles of bags. And you know, there are definitely issues with rats, you know, going into the bags, but unfortunately we do also have people who are suffering from mental illness who will rip open bags. People who are homeless who will rip open bags to see if they can find, you know, usable items, food, stuff like that. So unfortunately, I think that contributes a lot to loose litter everywhere. And then, you know, as you see that loose litter, you also have people who just feel like, well, there's already trash on the ground. Why do I have to find a garbage can? I'm just going to throw it on the ground too. And, you know, you're just adding to the problem. You're not being part of the solution. And I think a lot of people, you know, they'll come across, you know, here in Manhattan, we're lucky. We have public waste baskets on every single corner. So you can't say, oh, I have no place to put this. But when they're overflowing, it's hard because like, you want to put your coffee cup and you just want to make sure that you put it and can get away before everything falls over. You don't want to be that person that puts like the last piece on there and causes it all to fall over.
Yeah.
But you gotta find something. And I think it's actually in Japan where they realized that if they have less waste baskets, it forces people to take their waste home and then have to dispose of it at home. And that's a great idea, but I think when it comes to trying to apply some of these ideas from Asia or Europe in America, it's different. And it comes down to our societal values. And unfortunately, our society does not value the environment as much as other places do, and we don't care. And I think, even if we do care, I think, people here just feel so stressed, especially with the pandemic and everything that's gone on. We don't want to take responsibility for anything more than what we already have to do. And it's just really hard. And, there's also inequality in providing services and cleaning, Everything in New York is very expensive to do. And even, managing our waste. We spend $470 million carting our garbage to landfills and incinerators. That is so much money.
Exactly.
But also, if you look at neighborhoods, like say you go to the Upper East Side, you will not see litter on the ground. Upper West Side, you will not see litter on the ground.
Yes.
But then you go to places like the Lower East Side or Washington Heights or, areas in Brooklyn like Bushwick and Brownsville, and you see a lot more litter. And it's not because the people who live in those areas are dirtier, it's because the city has decided that they don't deserve extra money, or that they, that there isn't a service there to help do these additional things. When you're in neighborhoods that are wealthy, they can throw in extra money and pay people to clean up and do more maintenance. When you're around, public housing buildings, people there already have so much that they're going through.
Yeah.
They're struggling to survive, working really hard, long hours for really low wages. And then on top of that, you expect them to go out and clean their streets. It's not a priority for them, but it shouldn't also make you feel that they're any less or less deserving of living in a clean environment.
Yeah.
Everybody deserves to have the same access to clean streets, and it shouldn't be about those with money are the ones that can have that.
Yes. It's very interesting to listen to you. I can stay 1 hour like that. I feel more
Yeah.
to learn about that, because it's something that we see all the day.
Yeah, and even when you go back to the history of the Department of Sanitation, when it officially moved from the Department of Street Cleaning or Bureau of Street Cleaning to the Department of Sanitation in the late 1800s, the first commissioner, Colonel George Waring, he was the one that he went out and he cleaned up the poor neighborhoods first. And this was back when New York City, literally, you threw your trash on the street.
Yeah.
So there was dead animals, food waste,
a lot of food waste.
all bad stuff just on the sidewalks and on the streets, and it was really gross. We actually had wild pigs roaming the streets of New York on purpose to eat the food. That was one of their methods for dealing with the waste, was to have wild pigs to eat the food scraps. So, when Colonel Waring cleaned up the low-income neighborhoods first, and pictures, this was when photography was just becoming a thing, and pictures were in the newspapers. Nobody in history had seen the streets of New York clean before.
Oh yes?
It was the first time that they saw the streets clean, which is crazy to imagine. And it's something that I think we need to focus on again, is if we make the efforts and really spend the money to clean up the poorer neighborhoods, the low-income neighborhoods, and make sure that they get on, a good solid foundation, and give them everything they need, all the tools, all the access to be able to keep the area clean, I think it could be a lot different.
Yes, and sometimes when I clean up the street close to the playground or the playground, sometimes I'm thinking that it's never stop.
Yeah.
Because if I come back the next day, it was the same thing. And it's something you are discouraged because you think that you can do something just by yourself.
Yeah, it is really hard, but I think what makes it good is when you are doing the cleanup, you do get to immediately see the impact of your efforts. You immediately see that this street that was once filled with trash is now clean.
Yes.
And of course, maybe in a day or two, the trash will start to come again. But for, a few hours or maybe a day, it's clean, and everybody who walks down that street gets to experience, your efforts and what you did, and it doesn't take a lot of time to do it.
Yeah.
And it is frustrating that it's a never-ending thing, but I think, going out of the neighborhood and having other people see us out there cleaning, they really enjoy it. We get a lot of people who thank us. We've had people give us donations on the fly, oh, what you're doing is so great. People who drive by and snap a picture of my little cart and then follow us on Instagram and ask how they can get involved. So, people are really interested in wanting to do better. It's just, I think people are afraid to just do it on their own. They want to be in an organized group that's doing this, and it's just a great way to meet your neighbors.
Yes, it's why sometimes I do just only by myself, because I don't have time sometimes to go with an organization. I would like, but sometimes you don't have this time, and it's why I prefer to do something that nothing. And
exactly.
I think it's better than...
Yeah, and a lot of my volunteers, they come to our group cleanups, but they also now take care of their own blocks.
Yes, exactly.
So, that's something they do more regularly because now, they've done it with the group. They know what they need to do. They know what to do with the garbage once they collect it all. So it's just giving them the tools. And I think the more people you get involved, the more people will go out and take the responsibility and do this and realize that if everybody cleaned up that 25 feet in front of their building, it would just make New York City so much better. And it's just a little bit of effort by every single person. It's the same with going to zero waste.
Yes.
If you have more people doing zero waste imperfectly, it's better than having just a few people who do it absolutely perfect. So it's just a little learning process and getting people into it.
And when people saw you do something, they think about it.
Yeah. Yeah, and
change.
especially, in the spring when we start getting a lot of rain, to avoid the streets from flooding, you have to make sure the catch basins at the corners, there's not trash on top of them, that they're not blocked.
Yes.
So, frequently if we know a rainstorm is coming, we'll pay extra attention to those. And so now, I have volunteers who never before really noticed the catch basins on their street and didn't realize oh, this is a potential problem. And now that they've been alerted to it, they pay attention to it. And they go out and they make sure if they see a lot of trash or leaves building up, that they take a couple minutes and just clear it off. And it makes a huge difference. I've gone out during storms when, things start overflowing because there's just too much rain in a short period of time. And all it takes is a push broom or a rake to move all the stuff off the grates, and then the water just disappears.
Yes.
So it's just a very little bit of effort that you can put in, and you get a huge reward for it.
It's incredible all the things that you know. How do you do to learn about that?
A lot of it is just, being very curious. When I first started getting into this, I didn't know much about Department of Sanitation. I didn't know much about how, we dealt with our waste. I just slowly started asking questions. I would see things and I'd be like, why is this like this? how is this supposed to be dealt with? Who's responsible for this? And I actually ended up getting the phone number for the local garage because I was walking to work one day and I saw like a sanitation supervisor car parked on the side of the road, and I initially like walked by it and then I was like, oh wait, this is my opportunity. I went back, I knocked on the window, he opened it like a smidge. They started asking some questions and, you know, they told him, you know, what I do, you know, I get volunteers, we clean up the streets, you know, sanitation doesn't get enough respect, you guys need more advocacy, and people to understand like the hard work you do, and slowly the window just like lowered more and more, and he was like, oh, okay, this isn't like a crazy person who's gonna start yelling at me about trash. And so then he gave me the number for the local garage and said, you know, if you see problems or issues, let us know. You know, they're very responsive. They love their jobs. You know, with the sanitation workers I've talked to, they really feel like what they do is important. And it's unfortunate that most of what they hear are horns honking to get the garbage truck out of the way because it stopped and they're blocking the street. But if sanitation isn't there to pick up the garbage, you just, you know, you see it during snowstorms, because with snowstorms they have to plow before they can collect the trash. Most municipalities have two separate departments that deal with trash and deal with clearing snow. But in New York, it's the Department of Sanitation that plows the 6,300 miles of street in New York City, which is a lot.
It's a lot, yes.
And so while they're doing that, they're not collecting garbage. So the garbage starts to pile up, and then they have to collect all the garbage once the streets are clear. And so you can see, you know, after like a week of not having your garbage collected, it really, really piles up. So if we don't have the sanitation department and those workers out there every day picking up after us, the city is not going to be livable. So we need to do the best we can to make their jobs easier. You know, making sure all of our garbage is tied up, getting rid of the loose litter. Sanitation isn't out there collecting every single individual piece of litter on the street. You know, there's a lot of garbage here, and they have only about like 10,000 employees for a city of almost 9 million. So, you know, the other 9 million of us can do our part too.
And do you have an advice for the people, for New Yorkers who are looking at us?
My advice would be to, you know, pay more attention when you're outside, get to know your neighbors, and know that if you see a problem in your neighborhood, you're empowered to do something about it. There are people you can contact. You can reach out to your community board, you can reach out to your block association, you can reach out to your local council member, and you can say, hey, this is an issue, this is what I've seen, here are pictures, can you do something to help? And you know, I think a lot of times we feel like we're just yelling into the void. But if you don't alert the proper authorities as to what the problem is or that there is a problem, you're not going to get a solution.
Yes.
So definitely, you know, trying to stay on top of things and be more proactive and getting people to understand what their responsibility is. And even also just like, you know, if you see there's a business that usually has trash in front of their, like on their sidewalks and they don't clean, just go inside and talk to them, introduce yourself and ask and see like, hey, you know, it would be great if you guys could go out and sweep, you know, it would be good for your business and be good for the community. And I think it goes a long way to just, you know, have those conversations and be understanding with people instead of just keeping all that anger inside.
I totally agree, and it's funny because it's one of the discussions that I had with Wayne Marley. You know, she helped to have the skip the stuff law bill in New York, and she explained to me that sometimes we forget that just one individual can change something. Yeah. Because you start and other people can join you and you can change something.
Exactly, yeah. It's all about, you know, I think in New York, we all kind of like live in our little bubbles, and it's just so crazy sometimes to think about outside of that bubble. But the more we start talking and the more we kind of come together to, we all see the same issues.
Yes.
And we can work together to solve it. And then it just makes it easier because all of that burden doesn't fall on just one person. You have the power of the community who can say, this is not okay, we need to make change. And now, like with Skip the Stuff, that is now law.
Yes.
And takeout restaurants and whatnot will no longer be allowed to give you all this unnecessary utensils. I don't know why I'm ordering delivery to my house where I have utensils. I don't need your plastic utensils.
Totally.
I have my own metal ones. So it's confusing, but it's, and again, it's a small thing, but it will make a huge change.
Exactly. I totally agree with you. It's better for the restaurant because they make some
less money that they have to invest in, and it's just
less for the waste.
Yeah.
It's better for us too because we will have more place.
Exactly. I have a little stockpile in one of my closets where even though I say no utensils, they always find their way into the bag, and I don't know, I'm not going to throw them out. So I just have this stockpile and I don't know what to do with it.
It's so great news about that. I love this bill. And do you have something to add that I forget to ask to you? I'm sure that you.
I mean, there's so much. But if anyone's interested in getting involved with the Litter Legion, you can check us out at litterlegion.org, our website. We list all our upcoming events and resources there. You can find different, things that you can report to 311, how to report overflowing baskets, how to adopt a basket, also like a list of litter and waste related books if you're interested in learning more about the history of sanitation or how waste is dealt with and everything to do. It's a huge industry when you really get into it, and it's like an entire economy kind of exists around waste. On Instagram, we're at litter_NYC. We post a lot of fun stuff, and we try to keep it informational, explaining why sanitation does what they do, how people can be, better, different little steps you can take in your daily life to just make change. Again, like as simple as like a reusable cup.
Exactly.
It's great. And like, this is iced coffee. This ice will probably still be iced tomorrow if I don't finish it.
I'm sure about that.
Which is amazing, And I almost can't even get hot coffee in here because it stays too hot. It's just too good at its job.
It's so better and it's so funny to become more sustainable. I love this way because you learn, you can share, and it's not something boring.
Yeah, and also, if you invest in a quality product, maybe it's a little bit more expensive at that moment, but over time, it saves you a lot of money. So it's looking at that cost-benefit analysis and realizing like, I can buy some really cheap clothes or cheap shoes because they're trendy, or I can buy well-manufactured items that are timeless, that will last. And I think, putting more effort into quality manufacturing and things that are built to last is what we need to do.
And it's true, sometimes it's expensive and sometimes not really because, for example, my cup, it's a second hand. I know the woman we give to me, she's a friend, but it's a second hand.
Yeah, no, and that's great. Like there's so many, like on Facebook, there's so many buy nothing groups where people can be like, hey, I have this stuff, I don't need it anymore, but it's still in good condition. Does anybody want it? And it's just a great way for neighbors to share items, or even like if you need to borrow items, sometimes people want like a carpet cleaner or like a furniture steamer or something. You don't need to buy that. You don't need to rent it. If someone owns one, you can be like, hey, can I borrow this? You only need it for a few hours. It's a way to like share these things amongst the broader community.
Yes, totally agree. Thank you so much, Catie, for this time.
No problem.
I hope that people learn a lot than me. And thank you.
Yeah, thank you. This is great.
It was awesome to speak with you.